Hi everyone, welcome to this week's session with the Birthday Salon. Today we have Agatha Lee, a textile artist, and we'll be getting her to share about her article that she wrote for the 2018 birthday book called How I Found My Inner Tortoise. As you know, I'm Hazira, we have Chris, you'll see Agatha on the screen later. And just to start off the questions, I'll ask Agatha, what inspired the piece? Because the theme for the 2018 birthday book was the roads we take. So how do you respond to that? Why do you respond to that in this way?
Hi everyone, thanks Hazira for the introduction. Well, how was I inspired to come up with this topic? Well, it just happened that when I was asked by one of the founders, I think it was Cheryl, she asked me to contribute to the article. Originally, I wasn't really sure what I would be writing, but at that particular time, I was going through a process of reevaluating my art, reevaluating what I wanted to do. And I was thinking like, hey, I could share this, because a lot of people, I think they're at certain crossroads in their life and they're not really sure what's the next road that I should take on their journey to whatever it may be. And so I thought it was very important. And actually, I was also sharing it with my son as well, because at that point of time, in primary school, they were deciding, okay, which school should I go to next? And so I thought it was a good thing to actually slow down and, take a step back and think about, hey, what's the most important thing that I want in my life at that point of time. And then for me, it was, just exploring. The whole process of exploring my neighborhood, as you read in the article, was that process of discovering, just the slowing down and finding the inner tortoise that I talk about.
I quite like the idea of having crossroads and to have to pause at them to think about where you want to go next. And then I also quite like that the way you saw that, like the way you responded to that crossroads was to literally like go out and take stock of what you saw physically before you. And I think the image was like the image of the crossroads will probably stick with me for a bit. So I guess like building on that in terms of this action that you take, the exploring your neighborhood, would you call that your inner tortoise?
I think my inner tortoise evolves. So I mean, at that point of time, I was always exploring my neighborhood, looking for inspiration for my artwork. And that was in 2018. And now we're in 2020, 2 years later. I still do those walks, but now it's more of trying to get off social media. I think there's always this fear of missing out. Oh, am I at this event? Did someone like my post? And I've taken that step back and I believe, it's actually helping me to energize me in what I need to do.
I can only imagine how much it takes one's energy if one is in a creative industry like yourself, where you're constantly creating, constantly making sense of things, and how much all these other noise can distract you from really focusing on what really matters, So that really, so I really resonate and I really wanted to thank you for that. 2 points, a quick one from me, and it's not so much of a question as it is an observation of both your article and what you shared. I really, really like, and Hazira knows this, I'm very biased about this. I really like your article. I really think slowing down is such an important theme that needs to be echoed in our society even more. And going back to your article though, there was one paragraph that you mentioned about looking at the cracks in the walls, the weeds growing, the stray cats, the laughter of the children. I think there's something about the beauty in the mundane that comes very apparently when one slows down. And it's almost as though, regardless of what one's faith tradition or whatnot, there's really an echo of the divine or echo of something far larger than yourself only happens when you slow down. And so I thought of just affirming your point and also making sense of how right now you were mentioning about walking around that same journey, you were mentioning about 2020, maybe now instead of walking around in the park, you walk around with a mask because necessary, right? And this social media detox that you talk about to help you focus, I think that's a very important reminder that we need to hear.
I just want to pick up on the idea of the beauty of the mundane, because I think especially now, because we're more cautious about going out, that you have to find joy in things that happen in your house. So something that personally brought me a lot of strength during the circuit breaker period was cooking, which was something that I hadn't done in a very long time. And I wasn't making anything particularly like fantastic or complicated, but it was just the simple process of like chopping up the onions and then chopping up like the capsicum pieces and putting it together that just made me feel a bit more sane.
Yeah. Yeah. You just enjoy the whole process, you know? From like the ingredients to the final dish and then just presenting it and eating it. Yeah. But I was just wondering because Chris was mentioning the COVID period, and actually when COVID happened and then we were having the circuit breaker and then we were working from home because I have another job, I realized like the lines between home and work sort of blurred. And then I just got really busy because of that. And that was actually the period when I found it difficult to slow down because everyone was trying to, I mean, I'm going to use the word pivot, even though it's overused. We were all trying to pivot so that we could be online. And then that was sort of the opposite that I was, you know, trying to achieve. Yeah, that was difficult for me, I think.
The recognition that the boundaries between work and personal life is getting more and more conflated is really something that a lot of us experience with the work from home and with COVID. I was actually going to follow up on something. All that you mentioned so far has been benefits of slowing down. And I'm just curious from your perspective, has there been any potentially negative repercussions or circumstances that you face because you chose to intentionally slow down? Yeah.
There probably were like some opportunities I missed. I'm sure there were. When you actually throw yourself out there, you try to grab as many things as you can. But yeah, when you slow down, you sometimes miss some of the opportunities. But then in the back of my mind, I probably think, if I've missed it, then so be it. I probably spend more energy on doing certain things better, certain projects better than I would if I had X more number of projects.
Right. You did mention in your article about focusing on quality, right? Rather than quantity.
Yeah, quality. Yeah. I do notice like sometimes people will think, oh, she doesn't want to be involved anymore. We'll just, you know, yeah. But
has that been tough to negotiate though? Like that kind of a perception?
Yes, it has been. Yeah. Yeah. But I guess at the end of the day, you just have to share what values you have, which is, you know, to produce quality work, which I'm sure everybody wants. Yeah. At the end of the day.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that, Aggie. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
In preparing for this, Chris and I like talked about what things we wanted to ask and the thoughts that we had from the article, and something that Chris shared, which I'm not sure if you'll bring up later, right? But he talked about how you learn to say no. And I think it's something that you also kind of like brought up in your article. So just, and that you also kind of like just mentioned, right? Like sometimes if people think that you don't want to be involved, then because it's a choice that you've made based on your values, and because you know those, like because you can identify those things, then it's easier for you to say no. So I guess like to that trend, I guess people who might not be so convinced of themselves might find it harder for them to say no, you know, to the things that they may or may not be sure of.
But I would still say that it can be a struggle at times, you know. I wouldn't say that I'm 100% there, you know. I mean, sometimes I'll feel at the back of my mind, I'll be thinking, maybe I should have said yes, you know. There's that niggling feeling.
And I just wanted to echo that because even though, you know, Aggie, you mentioned the niggling feeling, it also shows how iterative this process is, how it's a journey, right? Like saying no is not just something you switch on and you say, no, you know, it's just no. It's a muscle that we build, right? To be able to over time discern. I think you mentioned it very nicely in your article. What are the things that you say no to only so that you can say yes to the right things, right? And the things that really matter.
Yeah.
The conversation I was having with Hazira prior to chatting with you was that I think my preconceived notion of how you are able to say no quite clearly, at least reading from your article, is an integrated self. So what do I mean by that is because you are assured in what you do and your values and the emphasis on producing quality textiles, that gives you that freedom and that space to say no because you know what matters, compared to perhaps others who base their self-worth purely on productivity. Then saying no will inevitably affect them very badly because then it becomes a matter of personal worth already. I just wanted to ask your perspective on that. What do you think of that point?
I think it's a valid point. I mean, everybody, I think as individuals, we have the right to decide, you know, where we lie in terms of the values that you mentioned. For me, it's been like you said, it's not a immediate switch. It's not like overnight, I would say, okay, I'll say no to everything or that sort of thing. But it's been a very, very gradual process. And I mean, I'm better at it now, and it's definitely helped me a lot.
I'm going to push the envelope a bit more and,
Okay.
and get to this conversation a bit in a bit more juicy manner, because it's getting very exciting, at least to me.
Okay.
So when I was looking at your article, you mentioned that there were certain things happening in your life at that point in time that prompted you to reconsider and to reevaluate and to then buy into this idea that, okay, I need to slow down. You recognize this need. I'm wondering though, does it, and I don't have the answer, so I'm wondering out loud, and Hazifa, feel free to chime in also. I'm wondering whether the need or the push to slow down can only happen when one is already being stretched to the point of exhaustion or being overworked or experiencing some form of mental burnout, Can one choose to adopt this slowing down? Yeah, before it happens, you see. I'm just wondering your perspective on that. Yeah.
Okay, like when someone starts out in the career, I think everyone thinks they're a superhuman being. Like they can do. It's true. Like everybody has aspirations to reach the top very quickly and a certain amount by X number of years. And everyone's just pushing themselves because it's a competition. I mean, if you look at it from school, actually, it's a competition. So I think everybody's in that mode, and so to me, it probably doesn't hit until you feel just exhausted or something. A major event happens in your life, like maybe someone in your family close to you passes away, or you fall ill. Yeah, I mean that's what I personally think. I'm not sure about everyone else. Yeah.
I echo your sentiments because it sounds as though implicit in what you're sharing is there needs to be almost a seismic shock, right? To remind us that we are finite, that we are limited, right?
Yeah.
I think I echo your point about how when any of us starts off our career, we feel like we are invincible and we want to do the best that we can, and we embody this competitive ethos that I think the nature of our education system is as such, right?
Yes, it is.
You mentioned about your son as well, right? In your article. Perhaps then something that I am learning to take away also from our conversation, at least at this juncture, is how then instead of anticipating this seismic shock, realizing that maybe that is part and parcel of the process, and how then can I manage and help the ones around me, my loved ones especially, to cope with this seismic shock. Because it is a privilege to be able to then say, okay, I'm going to slow down, rather than completely breaking down and like not knowing what to do anymore,
Yeah. I mean, I think it would work if you do it together, like you slow down together in a group, and there's that support between individuals. Because I've noticed it like for some movements, like the eco movement, for example. So everybody's doing it, and then they say, hey, I'm doing it, it's good, so then it rubs off on someone else. So I'm thinking that would probably be a way of doing it. Like you do, you slow down with your friends, and then there's this support system, and then it grows in that sort of way. I mean, like when we have COVID, everybody was saying, oh yes, we can all slow down. And I'm just wondering, have people actually slowed down? I mean, economically we've slowed down, but mentally, in terms of the wellness, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that resonates with me quite a bit, because I was on school break when COVID, like when the circuit breaker happened. So in that sense, like for me, it was a true slowing down. But the thing is, like my father wasn't, neither was my mother, because my mother had to prepare for the new school semester. So for her, it was like desperately trying to transfer everything online and to transform her resources into materials that she could use to teach her students, like even through the screen. And for my dad, like he works in the civil service, and I think he, like in the field that he works in, was one that was responding directly to the crisis. So for him, like I think you mentioned this earlier also, right? The work-home boundary just basically like disintegrated. Yes, it's no slowing down. There's still no slowing down. Now my mother has to physically like pull him away from the computer, or like get him to switch off the monitor screen, because it's bad. Like it's that bad.
Yes. I was actually just thinking about my dad's generation, looking at what he's been saying. I think how he lived is a lot slower than how we are living now. But he says like when he compares it to his dad's generation, he feels like it's very hectic. He feels that, I mean, there weren't any computers or any phones, but he feels it was more hectic than his dad's generation. And I'm just wondering, like, why are we getting, faster and faster? I mean, I'm sure we're working a lot more efficiently, but then why does that mean we don't have, breaks to slow down, or are we just gearing up ourselves to be working 24/7? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud there.
Yeah, once again, also resonate very deeply with that, because also in your article you mentioned about being connected 24/7, right, with our devices and things like that. So I'm just wondering, also shifting the conversation a little bit from the individual's perspective, because you summarize it really nicely about how as an individual or as communities of individuals, we should, as much as possible, intentionally make it a point to slow down. I'm wondering, from your perspective, do you have any suggestions to share with how institutions or systemic structures can be spaces that allows for the slowing down of individuals as well? Yeah.
I'm going to be a bit cliche, but I think it has to start from the top down. You know why? Because I'm not going to say which agency. I used to work in a public agency. And initially it was, we did have a very good work-life balance, I would say. And then someone new at the top came in and everything completely changed, because that particular person was literally working 24/7. And so then there was this expectation that everyone below him had to do the same. And then it was, and then that hamster wheel just started turning quicker and quicker. So that is my answer, even though it does sound cliche. But I really think it's how it's set at the top.
Thank you for that. I mean, cliches exist because there's some realism in it, right? But yes, to model after, I guess, the sense of slowing down requires some form of leadership, some form of sponsorship, endorsement of that sentiment. Yeah. And I think before I pass the time back to Hazira, I think my last point on this juncture would be, if we have already established that finding one's inner tortoise generally is reactionary insofar as one needs to have a seismic encounter, then surely perhaps some individuals who have yet to experience such a visceral experience of their limitations don't see the need, to necessarily slow down, or don't necessarily buy into the idea of slowing down. And therefore,
that is interesting, actually. But I mean, I think, I'm hoping like people who have read the article, they might say, oh yes, hey, that's me. I should do something about it, or maybe they sit in their kid and they don't want their kid, to model what's happening in their lives. And so coming back to the earlier question about whether it needs a seismic shock, maybe it might not. I mean, that there are also other movements, about working with your hands, going back into the arts, appreciating nature. Those are forms of slowing down, but maybe people don't see it as slowing down. They're just seeing it as a space to actually mentally unload. And therefore, they've started on that journey.
It always just gives me quite a bit to reflect on, I think. And especially this idea of like, do you need a shock to your life to stop and take stock? I suspect the answer is probably no, but I also suspect that for people who seem to continue running on the hamster wheel, whenever they do take a stock of their life, it's to be like, I've achieved these things, and then I want to achieve these things next. Which I personally I personally don't understand, because I'm just like, look, man, rehabilitate yourself. But I guess for some people, they just don't. It's not as important.
I mean, like, so last week, National Day, it's a long weekend. So we just decided to walk from home all the way to the shorefront. It was about an hour walk. And then, I mean, for me, I wanted to do it for quite a long time. And then when I did it with my husband, and then he was like, hey, this is a nice walk. We could do this every weekend, and so, or, every few days. And so for him, it was like a realization that right, I need to take that break. I need to go out and explore a bit more. It's not just at home in front of my computer trying to finish my work. Yeah, and having that break is a good time to reflect and not be on the phone as well, because we left our phones at home.
Nice.
Yeah.
So to add on to that, what I think you just shared about you and your husband walking down, I think that's very telling and very inspiring, simply because there is not just an intentional choice to leave one's immediate home office to step outside, to take stock, to relish in nature. There's also this important intentionality that I'm hearing from you to engage the senses, really, because taking breaks for many people can look like different things, right? Maybe taking a break from my email would be me working on a different paper. So then that is really not, right? Whereas for you, it's, put your phones away, we leave our house, and then we do a nice long walk. I think that's such a interesting reframing that I wanted to thank you for just sharing with our community and our listeners and viewers that requires some form of agency and recognition that one needs to be intentional. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be going out for a long walk. It should be something that you don't normally do, something that's out of the box. Yeah.
The question that Hazira and I also prepared for you, so to speak, was could slowing down be detrimental to one's competitive advantage, And actually, just to answer our own question to you, synthesizing what you just shared, is actually maybe not, because if slowing down, as you rightly pointed out in your article, gives you this sudden inspiration, right? I think you captured it so beautifully, and you are then able to be even more creative and productive because you have slowed down. Then maybe Hazira and I already had our answer about competitive advantage, that there is some form of competitive advantage, maybe not immediately apparent through slowing down.
Yeah, that's very true, because for me, I just discovered a niche, a way of expressing my art. I had never done it before. It's actually pushed my art in certain ways so that, I create art which is better for me. And better for the audience as well. So, I mean, that's been a really good process, I would say. For me.
In your own words, creating art that is better for me and therefore better for my audience. I think that is so pivotal in whatever that you just shared, because self-care, right? It's important, and self-care is not selfish, right? And so
definitely not.
And when you take care of yourself, the ramifications is expanded outwards, and everybody celebrates the gift that your textiles get improved and you come up with better art and things like that.
I'm gonna share something funny. So when I don't take care of myself, I do get a little irritated, and that's when I sometimes take it out on my family, and they're like, "Why are you so angry?" So it's I guess it makes you a better person.
I think it's also a huge privilege to be able to have family members that can tell you in your face, "Why are you so angry?"
Yes.
That says a lot about the health of the family already, Azira, back to you.
I think I was just going to ask about the... Oh my god, my brain just stopped functioning. Okay, sorry.
It's okay, but because we're slowing down.
It's correct. It's a Saturday afternoon, guys.
Yes.
What was I going to say? Yes. I quite like the idea of when you slow down, your art is better for you and for the people who are looking at it. And also partly in preparation for this, and also actually no, this is how I told Chris. Okay, I go to my grandmother's house on weekends to see her, and she always prepares food, a lot of food. And last Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago, when I went to her house, because she covers the table with newspapers, and there was this small newspaper article that talked about your work, and specifically it talked about your COVID-19 lexicon series, the ones that you're producing for the postcard, for the Pameran postcard. And that's how I found out. I went to my grandmother's house not thinking about doing work, and I saw that and I was like, oh, actually this might be and I looked it up and I was just like, oh, this is very beautiful, and it's very it was interesting, and it was a way of thinking about the words that's been thrown around a lot, so much represented in such a different way. So I guess I'm a bit curious about the pieces. So to clarify to everyone who's watching, what I'm talking about is this growing COVID-19 lexicon, and it's for Pameran Postcard, which is a exhibit that is collecting postcard-sized artwork. So I guess how do you get the words? What's the inspiration for this? Where did this come from?
Oh, right. So the call for the postcards came, I can't remember. I think it was the beginning of the year. And I already had my mindset on doing the postcards a certain way. I just didn't have a theme. And then circuit breaker happened. And during that period, I was just feeling really down, no inspiration at all. You can't go out. Yeah. And it was a tough feeling that no art was being produced. And I was thinking, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this. But then I realized, why not just put, how I was feeling into these postcards? And what stuck in my mind was like all these new words that were coming up, like they were appearing every day in the media, no matter how hard you tried, or I tried, you always hear updates every day and you're thinking, oh gosh, when is this gonna end? And so I thought for me, instead of writing it in a diary, I thought, why not just put it in pieces of in postcards, literally. And so the words that I chose were the words that stuck in my mind in each particular month. So in February, March, I think it was gold standard, because I think we were really happy that we were doing well, but then it was an outbreak, so I had those two words. And then by the time we reached March, April, I think I had another word. There's a social distancing, which is, I think, the one that you saw.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to really express my feelings through the postcards, but with the words that we always hear in the news. Yeah, I've only made four, and I'm still thinking about my fifth postcard. We're supposed to make 10. Yeah, so you see, I've been really slow. So. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, I think in this case the slowness is very, very helpful, because like I think this is my emotions, right, as I went through some of the postcards that you posted, like or the bits of postcards that you posted on Instagram, that it really, to me, it creates new associations for the words. So I think beyond thinking of them as like, how do I say this? I think when I saw like social distancing, I was just like, oh, again, or like, I think it was very, like, it's a phrase that has become necessary but also kind of frustrating. But then I think when I saw your piece, I was just like, oh, this is beautiful, and it's made me feel like a bit less frustrated about the word.
Oh,
or about
thank
seeing
you.
it. Yeah.
I had one, the latest one, it said community. And that one really stuck in my mind because it makes me feel happy but angry at the same time because of the way we've been using it during COVID. Yeah. I think that one was my favorite, actually. It made a lot of people think about what community really is in Singapore. Yeah.
Chris, do you have any questions with regards to this?
I am clearly in my inner tortoise mode, right? Just receding into my shell, because just basking in this space that we are holding together. Each time we have a conversation with an individual on the Birthday Salon, there's always a very interesting, unique, distinctive flavor of the conversation. And for today, it's almost a very therapeutic process.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Even our conversation, maybe the cadence is a little bit slower. I'm almost like savoring the words that you're sharing. Clearly, I'm waxing lyrical a little bit, but like I'm savoring some of the points that you're mentioning, and also having to reflect about my entire life experiences as you're sharing has been also pretty therapeutic in that way. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So not much of a question, Hazira. Do you have any additional questions?
No, actually, I'm just, how do I say this? Like, I just feel very content right now.
Yes.
Oh, so we're in a zen mode at the moment.
Yes, yeah. You see, Aggie, the effect that you have on us. Yeah. Just curious, Aggie, do you have any questions for us, though, after you've heard our discussion and our points and what we've shared so far?
Yeah, because you told me, well, before this session, you were sharing that both of you are in teaching, right? Yeah, somewhat. Chris, somewhat, yeah. So Hazira said she's going to go teach in school, and you're at...
Yeah, adult learning
stream. Yeah, so I was just wondering, like, after hearing all this and reading the article, would you intentionally make your teaching, I mean, I wouldn't call it slower, but would you actually convey this quality to your students, or how would you do it? I'm just curious, because when it comes to teaching, especially after observing my son being taught, everything is just sheets and sheets of paper, homework, uh, test after test, and there's no stopping. Yeah. Or maybe it's just has to be a systemic change. I have no idea. Yeah. It was just probably a comment rather than a question.
No, I think, okay, I do agree that if in order for it to really be effective, it has to be a systemic change. But I think something that I find like helps when talking to students and for myself is that I take slowing down as also a form of stock taking. So where I am and where I need to go. And usually when I couch it like this, the kids, like, I think, take to it a bit better, because then they're like, okay, so this is kind of relevant to the exam, which is always, which I personally find always very sad, because if I have to tell students that it's related to the exam or it's related to them doing well, only then will they like maybe like tune in a bit more. But what I personally find helps is that if you think of it as a stock take, as this is where I am and this is what I need to work on to be where I need to be, then it is helpful for you to, like, move forward instead of just like rushing to complete a certain number of like exam papers or a certain number of questions, because there's actually really like no point in completing like your 10-year series if you don't understand what you're completing, or if you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing. And for me also, like, I don't believe in waiting for the thing to explode before you slow down, mostly because I think I have exploded before and it has not been great. And what helped me get through it was because I had friends who then reminded me to constantly like stock take at different bits. So anytime I feel like the tiniest bit frustrated, I will sit down and like sit with my thoughts and think about it. And it's something that I found has been helpful when I talk to students who are frustrated in that moment, to just be like, look, just stop, think about like, why are you frustrated exactly? And usually like what happens is completely unrelated to why the student like blew up, or like why the student decided to throw his pencil case at his friend. And I guess I'm not sure if this actually answers the question, because I realize now I'm not even sure if I'm talking about slowing down. But I guess what I'm trying to say.
You are,
yeah. I think the entire pace of our conversation has been healthily slowed down to a point our minds cannot process it in a way. But yeah, but to echo Hazira's point and to also weave in the summary section of our conversation to be faithful to our time, because I think, Aggie, you asked a very good pertinent question, and I would love to answer it as best as I can. So I think in terms of slowing down in the spheres of work, right, in my life, I've been very, very fortunate and privileged to have friends who and loved ones who see the importance of slowing down. So that's why when I read your article, it just made very explicit what I intuitively experienced. And so to me, that captured the essence of what my friends and I truly believe in. And so hence the biasness, of your article, that I love it so much, and things like that. But to make it more relevant to your point, I think I marry the point of slowing down and intentionality very closely. To me, I see that almost as two sides of the same coin. One needs to be intentional when one slows down, because I think if one is slowing down unintentionally, I'm likening it on a highway, right? If you're driving and then you have a car who's so slow in front of you, like don't keep to the right lane if you're not going to overtake, that kind of thing. And then they are slowing you down and you are like, oh, get out of the way, So, but that is totally not intentionally slowing down at all, right? If you really wanted to do that, you would be going on the left lane, or you wouldn't even be driving, be walking or something like that. So the point I was going to make is that I think even in adult learning classes, even in the capacities in which I'm privileged to teach, I think intention matters. Setting aside time for recalibration, for holding space, for allowing conversations to take place, sometimes difficult ones at that, and recognizing the voice in every individual. And I know all of this sounds like tangents from slowing down. However, I see all of this as symptomatic and almost forming a very beautiful web to surround slowing down. Because I think if slowing down is the process, then all of these are symptomatic effects and byproducts of one's slowing down. Yeah. And on that note, though, bringing our conversation to a summary of sorts, I think, Aggie, once again, thank you so much for your generosity in sharing all of these words of wisdoms. And I really maybe just want to focus on 3 to 4 points that were very pertinent. in a very interesting manner. Aggie, your point on textile, right? And Hazira, your point on cooking are so interrelated, you know? You cannot rush these things, right?
Yeah.
Like, you cannot rush cooking. I mean, I've rushed cooking and it didn't turn out very nicely. My parents didn't really enjoy the food, you know? And some things like chopping things, please, for goodness sake, don't rush. You might chop off your fingers. I cut myself before, so because I was rushing. So I think some things like these things, and I think, Aggie, you mentioned using your hands, right? Like slowing down, using your hands, going to nature. All of these things are environmental factors that we can be more intentional in helping us slow down and choosing to slow down. I think the point also of reframing is very important that Aggie you mentioned that perhaps, you know, and like what Hazira said, we don't have to wait for a crisis to prompt us to slow down. Perhaps we can be more aware of it, that we are, I think like what Aggie you mentioned about, if I'm getting more irritated in little things, right? If little things are getting me upset, maybe that's a very good indicator or thermometer of sorts that I need to slow down. And even better if I have family members who hold me accountable to that. I think that is such a privilege to have and so loving to witness. And I think the last point I was going to share also is this very beautiful point that you mentioned about your postcards. I think these are all, to me, very beautiful artifacts, very beautiful fruits that one produces when one chooses to slow down. It could be postcards, it could be poetry, and these are ways to process the slowing down experience for them, right? And it's interesting because in choosing to slow down, they create even more art. Oh my goodness, you know, how can it not be contrary to productivity, right? That there is some element of creativity and creating something there. So I think before I pass the time back to Hazira, I've been thoroughly enjoying this conversation, obviously. And maybe slowing down is not just, at least from our conversation today, and I think Aggie would echo the following, slowing down is not just a cognitive, cerebral thing. I think it's an integrated, holistic experience. Because going back to the institutional point that Aggie mentioned, certain groups of people, maybe with positional authority, may see the importance of slowing down, but they may see that from a very cerebral perspective. And I think one's experience of it is very different if one has a very tangible, visceral experience of needing to slow down. And perhaps though, going back to Hazira, the question then would be, how can we manage and create opportunities for us to slow down in our daily lives in an intentional way? Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. That was a lovely summary, and I think you also left us with really good things to reflect on, especially that last question. Yeah, so everyone watching, please think about where and when you should slow down your daily lives, because it is far more valuable than I think we like to think. Yeah. So on that note, thank you everyone for listening into this week's Birthday Salon. Chris and I really enjoyed having this conversation with Agatha, and we really, really enjoyed having you and sharing your wonderful pearls of wisdom with us. So yes, thank you everyone. Look forward to next week's episode. Bye.